Now, the passing of the late Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu has brought about much sadness, not only in South Africa but globally. Remembered for his extraordinary intellect, integrity and his forgiving and committed spirit, Tutu died at home in Cape Town, aged 90, after a battle with prostate cancer. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for his role as a unifying leader in the campaign to end apartheid. Former anti-apartheid activist Saths Cooper joins us now live to reflect on the life and legacy of the late Archbishop. Good afternoon, Mr. Cooper. A very sad day indeed. We know the Arch lived a full life, but we hoped he would live for longer to continue to be that moral authority in a society that has somewhat lost its moral compass. Just take us through your own first encounter with the Arch, firstly.
Well, we knew the Archbishop when he was a lecturer at the Federal Theological Seminary in Alice, and he produced a huge crop of reverends in different denominations, including his own, the Anglican one. He was an early proponent of black theology, which put black people at the center of their universe, rather than being shadows of anybody else, as was the intention of the previous colonial and apartheid systems. He believed that all human beings were made of the same material, biologically, and that mentally we were subjugated into a belief that because of the portrayals maybe of Jesus as being white when he was clearly Middle Eastern, that white was right and white was better and superior than any other human being. So his belief was in equality, and he stood that ground throughout his life, fighting any kind of oppression of man by man, and stood up for causes that were unpopular at different times, during the apartheid era in particular, and during democracy as well. So I think he was a quintessential man of all seasons, a great humanist, gave rise to the phrase Rainbow Nation, which some may dispute, and talked of Ubuntu, which others have cottoned on and written about. But he was a wonderful, caring, compassionate human being, and who tended to understand his opponent better than the opponents understood themselves.
No, most certainly a very intelligent man. Now, you in particular, you joined the struggle at a very young age, witnessing the brutality of the apartheid system. Then we had the positioning of the TRC, which was that of forgiveness. What were your views on the TRC's positioning then, when the wounds were still fresh, and your views now, with the benefit of a fuller picture of what can be achieved when we forgive, something that he advocated for?
Well, look, let's be very clear. If we did not have the TRC, and if we did not have the negotiated settlement that preceded it, we would have experienced wide-scale bloodshed and strife. Not that we don't experience it now, but in a different form. It's not quite the political onslaught that we experienced then, but it does assume a political form that had its genesis during apartheid. I can strictly say that Archbishop Tutu was one who stopped the burning of a man in Duduza, and just over a week later, the first necklace victim, Marquis Kosana, unfortunately happened. We now know, and as we should have known then, that the apartheid state was heavily involved in black-on-black violence, as some of the for show. All of these were dealt with by the TRC. The TRC's job, like the Zondo Commission that we're expecting a report from, was not to go further than the legal prescripts under which it was created. And they covered all these extrajudicial killings. They covered the onslaught by apartheid against the majority of our citizens. It was up to the leadership, starting with Mandela, who received its final report, and then President Mbeki, President Zuma, President Motlanthe, and currently President Ramaphosa to give life to the TRC's recommendations. Sadly, until now, under the current Justice Minister, none of those were prosecuted, none of those were investigated, and many of those who are who are under trial are very old men. The Timol murderer has just died. So I think that our leadership let us down. It's not really the TRC. We sometimes blame institutions and we forget our own complicity in it. I think that our leadership let us down. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a Nobel laureate, was the last of a generation of principled, fearless leaders who did not get cowed by anybody, including President Mandela. He raised in his own inimitable way criticism of each of the presidents, and sadly, that generation is no more with us. Hope that we have a few more followers of the likes of Desmond Tutu who can take us to that moral ground that we so sadly need.
No, we definitely do need it now. But now this generation might not have a full appreciation of how privileged we were, in fact, to have lived during his time. What would be the single most important lesson that you have learned from the Arch and how he lived?
You know, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, whenever I used to visit him in his office in Johannesburg, and after the secretary showed us into his little boardroom at the back, and we'd await him, we had serious issues to discuss, and he'd note immediately by our demeanor that these young fellows are going to raise issues which are going to be beyond me. And immediately he will start with, let us pray. And all of us, whether we were Anglican or whatever, of other faiths, or agnostic, would immediately close our eyes and pray with him, so that we'd start the discussion with a tempering of his wise words. And so we never really got angry with each other, and that anger would dissipate because he would come with his pithy phrases on how to deal with the worst issues that we confronted, particularly the so-called black-on-black violence, which is still with us, but which was a creation of the apartheid structure.